Welcome to Wrestling Throne. The Usos and the dynamic team of AJ Styles and Dragon Lee have created an explosive collision of wrestling styles that has captivated audiences and delivered some of the most memorable tag team action in recent memory. This clash brings together the most dominant tag team champions in WWE history against an unlikely but incredibly talented pairing that combines phenomenal veteran excellence with the lightning-fast innovation of Lucha Libre's brightest star. Jimmy and Jey Uso have spent years perfecting their craft as a tag team, building a legacy that places them firmly in the conversation as the greatest tandem to ever compete in WWE. Their Samoan heritage flows through every movement, carrying the weight of a family dynasty that includes some of the most legendary names in professional wrestling history. The twins operate with a telepathic connection that can only come from a lifetime together, anticipating each other's moves before they happen and executing double-team maneuvers with precision that borders on supernatural. Their championship reigns have been defined by their ability to defeat every team placed in front of them, dispatching challengers with a combination of hard-hitting power moves, devastating superkicks, and aerial assaults that seem impossible for men of their size. AJ Styles brings to this partnership a reputation earned across 2 decades of excellence in every major wrestling promotion worldwide. The phenomenal one has conquered TNA, New Japan Pro Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and countless independent promotions before cementing his legacy in WWE with multiple world championships and classic matches that will be studied by future generations. His innovative offense combines technical wrestling mastery with high-flying athleticism that defies both physics and the aging process. At this stage of his career, AJ possesses the experience and ring generalship to lead any partner to success, making him the perfect complement to a younger, hungrier competitor looking to make his mark. Dragon Lee represents the next generation of Lucha Libre excellence, carrying forward a tradition of high-flying, fast-paced wrestling that has its roots deep in Mexican wrestling culture. The masked superstar exploded onto the WWE scene with a style that left audiences breathless and opponents scrambling to keep pace with his incredible speed. His aerial arsenal includes moves that seem to defy gravity, launching himself through the air with pinpoint accuracy to crash into opponents with devastating impact. Dragon Lee's willingness to take risks and his fearless approach to competition make him equally dangerous and exciting, the kind of wrestler who could change the entire dynamic of a match with one spectacular sequence. The pairing of AJ Styles and Dragon Lee initially seemed unlikely, bringing together a veteran known primarily as a singles competitor with a young luchador still establishing himself on WWE's main roster. Their first interactions showed a mutual respect built on shared excellence in the ring, with AJ recognizing Dragon Lee's immense talent and potential while Dragon Lee appreciated the opportunity to learn from one of the absolute best in the business. When they decided to join forces to challenge the Usos' seemingly unbreakable stranglehold on the tag team division, skeptics questioned whether they could develop the necessary chemistry to compete against a team that had been working together their entire lives. The Usos viewed this challenge with a mixture of amusement and annoyance, seeing AJ Styles once again trying to dethrone them but this time bringing along a partner they dismissed as unproven and out of his depth. Jimmy and Jey made it clear in their promos that they had beaten AJ before and would beat him again, and that adding a high-flying masked man who couldn't even speak proper English wasn't going to change the outcome. Their trash talk carried the confidence of champions who had survived every challenge thrown at them, who had proven time and again that when the pressure was highest, they delivered and their opponents fell short. AJ fired back with the kind of intensity that comes from a man tired of falling short against the Bloodline, determined that this time would be different. He spoke about Dragon Lee's incredible talent and unmatched speed, qualities that would give the Usos problems they had never encountered before. He promised that the combination of his experience and ring generalship with Dragon Lee's explosive offense would create challenges the Usos couldn't overcome no matter how long they had been teaming together. The edge in AJ's voice made it clear this wasn't just another challenge for him but a mission to prove he could finally conquer the team that had been a thorn in his side. Dragon Lee brought his own fire to the confrontation, speaking passionately about his desire to prove himself on WWE's biggest stage and show that Lucha Libre could compete with and defeat any style of wrestling. He talked about growing up watching Lucha Libre legends and dreaming of the day he could represent Mexican wrestling culture in WWE, and now he had the opportunity to do exactly that by capturing the tag team championships alongside one of the greatest wrestlers alive. His intensity and belief in himself added a new dimension to the challenge, making it clear the Usos weren't just facing AJ Styles with backup but a legitimate team with their own identity and aspirations. The first encounter between these teams happened on SmackDown in a non-title match designed to see if AJ and Dragon Lee could function as a cohesive unit. The opening exchanges immediately showcased the contrasting styles, with the Usos using their power advantage to bully Dragon Lee when they isolated him in their corner. They threw him around like a ragdoll, using their size to physically dominate the smaller luchador and cut the ring in half. Their double-team moves targeted Dragon Lee's back and ribs, softening him up for their finishing sequences while preventing him from using his speed advantage. Dragon Lee absorbed the punishment and waited for his opening, selling the beating beautifully while the crowd rallied behind him with rhythmic claps and chants. When he finally created separation with a desperate enziguri that caught Jimmy flush on the jaw, the arena erupted as Dragon Lee dove toward his corner. The hot tag to AJ Styles brought the crowd to their feet, with the phenomenal one exploding into the ring like a man possessed. He took down both Usos with a flurry of strikes, his striking combinations coming so fast that the twins couldn't mount any defense. A spinning backfist dropped Jey, and a Pele kick sent Jimmy tumbling out of the ring. The chemistry between AJ and Dragon Lee became immediately apparent as they hit a series of tandem offense that showcased both their individual talents and growing teamwork. AJ would whip an USO into the ropes and Dragon Lee would launch off AJ's back with a dropkick that caught the opponent perfectly. They executed poetry in motion with Dragon Lee running up AJ's back and launching himself at an USO in the corner with a devastating clothesline. These double-team moves looked crisp and impactful, proving that even without years of experience together, elite talents can quickly develop effective combinations. The Usos fought back with the championship-level resilience that had defined their reign, refusing to let these upstarts gain too much momentum. They caught Dragon Lee mid-flight with a double superkick that echoed throughout the arena, the impact so perfect that Dragon Lee crumpled like he had been shot. When AJ tried to break up the pinfall, Jimmy intercepted him with a suicide dive through the ropes that sent both men crashing through the announce table in a spectacular collision. Inside the ring, Jey climbed to the top rope and delivered the 1D splash onto Dragon Lee, hooking the leg for what seemed like a certain 3 count. Dragon Lee kicked out at 2.5, his shoulder shooting off the mat just before the referee's hand came down for 3. The crowd exploded at the near fall, unable to believe Dragon Lee had survived the Usos' most devastating combination. Jey looked at the referee in disbelief, holding up 3 fingers and arguing that the count was slow, but the official insisted it was only 2. This resilience from Dragon Lee sent a message that he wasn't just making up the numbers in this team but was a legitimate threat who could hang with the very best. The match continued at a breakneck pace, with all 4 men giving everything they had in what was supposed to be just a warm-up encounter. AJ hit the phenomenal forearm on Jimmy, but before he could capitalize, Jey broke it up with another superkick. Dragon Lee came flying in with a Spanish fly that planted Jey, but Jimmy recovered to save his brother. The near falls came fast and furious, each one bringing the crowd to the edge of their seats, each kick-out seeming more desperate and miraculous than the last. The closing sequence saw all 4 men in the ring despite the referee's protests, with tags becoming academic as the action broke down into controlled chaos. Dragon Lee and Jey Uso engaged in a striking exchange that had the crowd chanting with each blow, the smaller luchador refusing to back down from the bigger Samoan. Dragon Lee ducked a superkick and responded with a thrust kick that staggered Jey, then hit the ropes for a tilt-a-whirl DDT that spiked Jey's head into the canvas. On the outside, AJ and Jimmy were brawling around ringside, throwing each other into barricades and steel steps. Dragon Lee climbed to the top rope, measuring the fallen Jey for a high-risk maneuver that could put the match away. He launched himself with a picture-perfect Phoenix splash, his body rotating in the air before crashing down across Jey's chest. Dragon Lee hooked both legs and the referee counted 1, 2, but Jimmy slid in at the last possible moment to break up the pin. The save preserved the match for the Usos but also showed how close they had come to defeat, how this new team of AJ and Dragon Lee was more dangerous than they had anticipated. The match ultimately ended when the Usos managed to isolate Dragon Lee one more time, hitting him with simultaneous superkicks from both sides before Jey delivered another 1D splash for the victory. Even in defeat, AJ and Dragon Lee had proven they could compete at the highest level, taking the dominant champions to their absolute limit and earning respect from both the Usos and the watching audience. After the match, Jimmy and Jey didn't celebrate with their usual cockiness but instead looked at each other with concern, realizing they had been in a genuine war. The performance earned AJ and Dragon Lee a title shot, with WWE management recognizing that the team had chemistry and ability worthy of a championship opportunity. The announcement of the title match sent excitement through the WWE universe, with fans eager to see if this pairing could achieve what so many other teams had failed to do and finally end the Usos' historic reign. The build to the championship match saw both teams intensify their preparation, with training vignettes showing the Usos working specifically on countering Dragon Lee's speed while AJ and Dragon Lee developed more double-team combinations. The verbal exchanges became more personal as the title match approached, with the Usos trying to create division between AJ and Dragon Lee by suggesting that AJ was just using the young luchador to get another title shot and would abandon him the moment things got difficult. They brought up AJ's previous failed attempts to beat them, reminding him that no matter who he teamed with, the outcome was always the same. They told Dragon Lee he was wasting his time with a has-been who couldn't lead him to victory, that he should find himself a better partner if he really wanted championship gold. AJ responded by praising Dragon Lee's talent and work ethic, making it clear this partnership was built on mutual respect and shared goals rather than convenience. He talked about seeing something special in Dragon Lee from the moment he arrived in WWE, recognizing a hunger and ability that reminded him of himself at that age. AJ promised that together they would accomplish what needed to be done, that the Usos' reign of terror would finally end, and that Dragon Lee would get his first taste of WWE Championship gold far sooner than anyone expected. Dragon Lee spoke about the honor of teaming with a legend like AJ Styles and learning from his experience and knowledge. He addressed the Usos directly, telling them in passionate Spanish before switching to English that they had no idea what was coming, that Lucha Libre would shock them with its speed and innovation. He promised to show them that Mexican wrestling culture produced warriors just as tough as any Samoan, fighters who never backed down and never quit no matter the odds stacked against them. The championship match took place at a major pay-per-view event, with the stage set for an epic encounter that could reshape the tag team division. The entrances alone told the story of the match to come, with the Usos walking out with the confidence of champions who had defended successfully against everyone, while AJ and Dragon Lee came to the ring with the focused intensity of challengers who knew this was their moment. The crowd was split, with sections chanting for each team, creating an electric atmosphere before the bell even rang. The opening moments saw Dragon Lee and Jey Uso starting the match, with the speed differential immediately apparent as Dragon Lee zipped around the ring avoiding Jey's attempts to grab him. Dragon Lee used his quickness to land several strikes before Jey could react, peppering the bigger man with kicks to the legs and body that began to slow him down. When Jey finally caught Dragon Lee, he used his power advantage to throw the luchador across the ring with an overhead belly-to-belly suplex that showed the danger of getting caught. Jey tagged in Jimmy, and the Usos began their systematic dismantling of Dragon Lee, cutting the ring in half and preventing him from making the tag to AJ. They worked over Dragon Lee's back with calculated precision, using backbreakers and submission holds designed to slow down his aerial attack and make it painful for him to execute his high-flying maneuvers. Every time Dragon Lee tried to fight back or move toward his corner, one of the Usos would cut him off with a clothesline or drag him back to their corner for more punishment. The crowd rallied behind Dragon Lee with rhythmic clapping that grew louder as the punishment continued, willing the young luchador to fight through the pain and make the tag. Dragon Lee fed off this energy, blocking a punch from Jimmy and responding with a series of forearms that staggered the bigger man. He ducked a clothesline and hit the ropes, launching himself with a handspring back elbow that caught Jimmy perfectly and finally created the separation he desperately needed. The tag to AJ Styles brought an eruption from the crowd as the Phenomenal One entered the ring on fire. He took down both Usos with clotheslines, his veteran instincts taking over as he controlled the match's pace and momentum. AJ hit Jimmy with a corner forearm combo before planting him with a snap suplex. When Jey tried to interfere, AJ caught him with a spinning backfist that sent him tumbling to the outside. The experience and ring generalship of AJ Styles was on full display as he directed traffic and kept the champions reeling. AJ set up for the phenomenal forearm, measuring Jimmy who was slowly getting to his feet. The crowd sensed the championship potentially changing hands as AJ launched himself off the ropes with his devastating finishing maneuver. At the last second, Jey pulled Jimmy out of the ring, the brothers' chemistry and awareness saving them from defeat. AJ didn't hesitate, immediately hitting the ropes and launching himself over the top with a plancha that wiped out both Usos on the outside in a spectacular collision. Dragon Lee wasn't about to let AJ have all the fun, backing up and getting a running start before launching himself through the ropes with a suicide dive that crashed into the recovering Usos. The high-risk offense from both challengers had the champions scrambling, unable to mount their usual organized defense. Dragon Lee grabbed Jimmy and threw him back into the ring, tagging AJ back in for some of their practiced double-team offense. They hit a combination where AJ held Jimmy for Dragon Lee to hit a springboard dropkick, the impact echoing through the arena. AJ immediately transitioned into a calf crusher submission, wrenching back on Jimmy's leg while Dragon Lee prevented Jey from making the save by hitting him with a tope suicida to the outside. Jimmy screamed in pain as AJ torqued the ankle, the submission hold threatening to end his night and the Usos' championship reign. The crowd was on their feet, sensing victory for the challengers as Jimmy's hand hovered over the mat. Jimmy's fighting spirit kept him from tapping out, the champion using every ounce of strength to drag himself toward the ropes despite the agonizing pain. His fingertips finally touched the bottom rope, forcing the break and keeping the Usos' championship dreams alive. AJ released the hold but immediately went back on the attack, knowing he had Jimmy hurt and wanting to capitalize before the Samoan could recover. He pulled Jimmy to his feet and set up for the Styles Clash, hooking the arms and preparing to deliver his most devastating maneuver. Jey recovered and slid into the ring, cracking AJ across the back with a forearm that broke up the Styles Clash attempt. The referee tried to get Jey out of the ring, but the chaos had descended to the point where tag rules were barely being enforced. Dragon Lee entered to even the odds, and suddenly all four men were in the ring trading strikes in the center. The Usos tried to hit stereo superkicks, but both AJ and Dragon Lee ducked, causing the brothers to nearly kick each other. The challengers capitalized on the confusion by hitting a double-team move they had practiced specifically for this match. AJ lifted Jimmy for a vertical suplex while Dragon Lee climbed to the top rope, coming off with a crossbody as AJ fell backward, driving all of Dragon Lee's weight onto Jimmy in a devastating combination. Dragon Lee hooked the leg for the cover while AJ intercepted Jey, and the referee counted 1, 2, but somehow Jimmy kicked out just before 3. The near fall was so close that many in the crowd thought the match was over, the roar of disappointment showing how invested they were in seeing new champions crowned. The match continued with both teams showing visible fatigue, the grueling pace and high-impact moves taking their toll on everyone involved. AJ and Jimmy were the legal men, trading strikes in the center of the ring with neither man willing to back down. AJ got the better of the exchange and hit the ropes for a phenomenal forearm, but Jimmy caught him out of the air with a superkick that had been timed perfectly. Both men collapsed to the mat, the momentum swinging wildly as neither team could sustain an advantage for long. Both men crawled toward their corners, the crowd clapping rhythmically to encourage them as they inched closer to their partners. Jimmy made the tag first, and Jey came in fresh looking to capitalize on the hurt AJ Styles. But AJ lunged forward and made the tag to Dragon Lee, and the masked luchador entered the ring like a bolt of lightning. He took down Jey with a running forearm, then hit a standing moonsault for a quick cover that got a 2 count. Dragon Lee's offense came so rapidly that Jey couldn't mount any defense, the speed differential overwhelming even the experienced champion. Dragon Lee climbed to the top rope, the crowd buzzing with anticipation for whatever high-risk move he was planning. He measured Jey and launched himself with a diving double stomp that he called Drilistico, his feet crashing down onto Jey's chest with tremendous impact. Dragon Lee immediately hooked both legs for the cover, and the referee slid into position counting 1, 2, but Jimmy made the save at the absolute last millisecond, his hand slapping the mat just as the referee's was coming down for 3. The kickout and save was so close that Dragon Lee and AJ thought they had won, celebrating briefly before realizing the match was still going. The frustration showed on their faces, wondering what they had to do to keep these champions down for the 3 count. Dragon Lee set up for another big move, pulling Jey to his feet, but the champion had been playing possum and caught Dragon Lee with a surprise superkick that turned the momentum completely around. Both Usos were now in the ring, and they hit Dragon Lee with their devastating combination of superkicks and the 1D splash. Jimmy made the cover, and it looked like the Usos had retained again, but at the last possible moment, AJ Styles made the save. The veteran's ring awareness had positioned him perfectly to break up the pin despite the punishment he had absorbed throughout the match. The Usos couldn't believe it, having hit their best offensive combination only to see it still not be enough. The frustration from the champions manifested as aggression, with both Usos targeting AJ Styles with a vicious beating outside the ring. They threw him into the steel steps, then over the announce table, taking out the veteran so he couldn't interfere again. Inside the ring, they set up Dragon Lee for another double-team finishing sequence, determined to put the young luchador away permanently. They hit him with simultaneous superkicks that should have ended anyone's night. But Dragon Lee's heart and determination kept him fighting, kicking out of the pinfall attempt at 2 despite absorbing incredible punishment throughout the match. The crowd roared their appreciation for Dragon Lee's fighting spirit, chanting his name as he struggled to his feet. The Usos looked at each other in disbelief, running out of ideas about what it would take to keep their challengers down. They argued briefly about what to do next, and that moment of hesitation proved costly. Dragon Lee hit Jey with a desperate superkick of his own, then caught Jimmy with a thrust kick to the gut. With both Usos momentarily stunned, Dragon Lee made a diving tag to AJ Styles, who had recovered enough to climb back onto the apron. AJ entered the ring and immediately hit the phenomenal forearm on Jimmy, the impact perfect as he connected with his finishing move. AJ hooked the leg for the cover, and the crowd counted along with the referee 1, 2, 3. New tag team champions had been crowned in a match that would be talked about for years to come. The celebration that followed was emotional, with AJ Styles and Dragon Lee embracing in the center of the ring as their music played and the championships were handed to them. Dragon Lee held the title above his head with tears visible through his mask, the young luchador having achieved his dream of becoming a WWE champion. AJ wrapped an arm around his partner's shoulders, the veteran finally having conquered the team that had frustrated him for so long and done so by helping elevate a young talent in the process. The Usos sat at ringside in shock, their historic reign finally ended by a team they had underestimated. The look on their faces showed genuine respect for what AJ and Dragon Lee had accomplished, even as they processed the disappointment of losing their championships. They would eventually stand and applaud the new champions, a show of class that acknowledged the excellence of the match and the worthiness of the winners. The aftermath of this match reshaped the tag team division entirely, with AJ Styles and Dragon Lee proving that different styles and generations could blend together to create something special. Their championship reign would inspire other unlikely pairings to form and chase the gold. The Usos would eventually invoke their rematch clause, leading to more incredible matches between these teams as the rivalry continued with the roles reversed. Make sure to follow, subscribe and like for more incredible wrestling content covering the biggest matches, rivalries, and moments that make professional wrestling the greatest form of entertainment in the world.